In the dark ages of custom mechanical keyboards, there weren't that many choices for tactile switches. You had Cherry MX Browns, and if you wanted something with more tactility, you had Cherry MX Clears. But the downside with MX Clear switches were their incredibly heavy spring that bottoms out at around 100 grams. But one day, someone opened up a MX Clear switch, swapped out the stock spring for a lighter spring, and the Ergo Clear was born, the first mainstream Frankenstein switch. Some folks still use Ergo Clears to this day, but I personally cannot recommend anyone get Cherry Clear switches. Idyllic has made a great video explaining the potential issues you may run into with MX Clear switches, and I've personally experienced some of those issues myself. There are a lot of options for a medium tactile switch these days, like the Dragon Fruits, Kinetic Lab Penguins, and now these, the new Cerulean switches by Durock. Canon Keys, a US vendor, sent these switches to me for my honest review. I was not paid for this review, and Canon Keys did not see the video before it went live. You can also buy these switches from other vendors worldwide. I'll link all the vendors I found below. The Ceruleans are manufactured by Durock and feature a blue-tinted full nylon housing and a palm stem. The tactile stem is pretty similar to an MX Clear stem, but the Clear stem looks to be sharper here at this point. As for the spring, it looks to be a standard 65 gram Durock gold spring. The Ceruleans sell for 65 cents each on Canon Keys in packs of 70, 90, and 110, which makes them about the average price of a tactile switch these days. These switches are factory lubed, and there's actually a fair amount of it. On the stem, you can clearly see the factory lube on the side rails and legs, and on the bottom housing, they're also on the side rails. It's a thin lube, so it should be easy to clean off if you want to work on a clean switch, and perhaps you might be able to lube just right over them. Next, let's talk about how these switches feel like. There's a bit of pre-travel before the bump, with a good amount of post-travel, just under 2mm. Since these switches are mimicking Ergo Clears, don't expect a huge tactile bump like on a lot of switches these days. The force is stronger than the Cherry MX Browns, but not quite as strong as Holy Pandas. Let's take a closer look at the push feel with the provided force graphs on the Canon Keys product page. By the way, I'm really glad that Canon Keys is starting to provide force graphs with all their switches because it provides a more objective look on how the switch actually feels. Here's a quick tutorial on how to read a force graph. The x-axis is the travel distance, and the y-axis is the force required to push down on the switch at those distances. The blue line here is the press feel. You can see that the line is showing a bit of distance before the peak. That's the start of the bump. Then the bump lasts for about 1mm, which by itself doesn't mean much, but when you look at the force graphs of other switches that you tried, you start to get an idea of how the switch feels without even trying it. At this linear path here, this is the post-travel, and you can see that it lasts for about 2mm, which is a lot longer than what I'm used to with other tactile switches. If we take a look at the force graph for the Neapolitan switches, for example, which is mimicking a Zyko switch, the post-travel is only a bit under 1mm, and you can see how little pre-travel there is here before the bump, and how much longer the tactile bump actually goes on for. I'll be comparing these switches against other light to medium tactile switches I have. I have Ergo Clears made with a 65 gram spring, Dragon Fruits by the Key Company, and Kale Browns. First off, if you're looking for a stock switch to use, I really like the switches stock. I didn't notice much or any scratchy feeling with these switches, and that's great because the only other tactile switch that I would use stock are the Boba U4Ts at the moment, but those have a different and stronger tactile profile. Want a medium tactile switch and you're too lazy to lube? The Ceruleans are a solid choice, but there are some things to keep in mind. Since the factory lube is a light oil, the switches will be on the clacky side, so if you're chasing that thought, you're going to want to lube them with something more vicious like triboses. You could use Krytox 205G0, but you want to be careful to not overlube them, which will destroy the tactility. There's also some leaf ping if you listen closely, which is common on a lot of tactile switches. It's not too noticeable when you're typing on the alphas, but when you start using the larger keys like the modifiers and spacebars, you can start to hear it. The way I try to alleviate the leaf ping, and I'm not even sure if this really does anything, but I lube behind the leaf. You could lube the stem legs and or the front of the leaf, but I want to preserve the tactility of these switches since they're on the lighter side. Overall, Ergo Clear type switches wouldn't be my first choice. I generally prefer linear switches over tactiles, so you may think that I would prefer a lighter tactile feeling, but I actually prefer a stronger bump when I choose to use tactile switches. And for me, that level is around the Holy Panda type switch. But I do see the appeal of these switches. While many tactile switches out there have a strong punch to them, these are calming to use. Of course, it's all personal preference in the end. Perhaps if you have strong fingers or type really heavy, you'll need an even stronger bump before you can feel the tactile feedback in a meaningful manner. Just a couple of other things, I really like the look of these switches. The gold leaf and spring gives a nice accent gold color to the housing, but it's not like that matters that much since you won't be seeing them under keycaps. And I found the stem wobble to be about average, maybe a bit better. Nothing terrible, nothing amazing, so I didn't put a stem wobble section in this video. Alright, that's it for me today. If you're interested in picking these up, consider using my affiliate link in the description below. I also link other vendors you can buy these from. Please like the video if you found it helpful, and subscribe to stay updated on my future content. Until next time.